Hey, welcome back. This is Cadillac. You are live. This is CRP Burst. I'm trying that, and it just sounded really lame. But my hat's cool. Hey, listen, I'm here with MMA fight analyst Devin Miller. You can't see him because he's live on the road. He's calling in. Devin, what's happening out there on the road, brother?
Oh, man, I'm staying safe, man. Just sat through the GSP press conference and where he supposedly just gave his farewell speech, and all the tears are starting to pour from all the nostalgic MMA fans who want to go ahead and etch GSP's record in stone. But we don't believe that here. We don't believe that we've seen that all of GSP's story has been written.
Yeah,
And
because hey, listen, I just saw it. I just saw a thumbnail on. I don't even know what it was, but it said GSP retires, no tears, which to me says, I mean, think about it. When Anderson Silva weighed in, just in his weigh-in at what possibly could have been his last fight, that dude broke down in tears. I broke down in tears watching him break down in tears. Did you cry? Be honest.
Dude,
Be honest.
I held it pretty much together. I was like nodding while I watched Silva, but then when I saw Adesanya, yeah, my eyes welded up because you could just tell that Adesanya loves that man.
Yep.
And when Adesanya looked right at John Anik and was like, he's trying to make me cry, F him, like he was, but he said it not in a true angry way. He was saying, man, come on, man, like I gotta fight you, tomorrow, and I love you, like I don't.
Yep.
Head
like games. Hey, remember this, if nothing else. I heard this one time from a guy in a 12-step meeting long time ago. I've had my struggles, to say the least. He said, real men eat quiche, real men wear pink, my favorite color, and real men cry. Just remember that. Hey, so listen, let's move on with this. GSP says he's going to retire and he's done with it, and I'm not waiting and blah, blah, blah. But what he's really saying is, I'm not going to wait around for Khabib to come back and fight me in November, which is basically in George's book a year as far as he's concerned, because he's 37, he's not getting any younger, and Khabib is, he's at the height of his career. George wants to make sure if he's going to go in there and fight him, he's going to fight him and win, right? So that's where that's at, in my opinion. What do you say about that?
Well,
2 minutes or less.
We've been like laughing about this here because it just takes simple logic, Chad. And I want anybody who listens to this to really think about it. What we're basically saying here, if we buy into this narrative that GSP wants to fight Khabib, is still saying that even at his retirement ceremony, he's saying, I wanted to fight with Khabib. Who retires like that, first off? Second off, Khabib wants to fight. Khabib wants to fight, but they're saying, oh, well, but the UFC is the organization. So to accept that narrative, what we're basically saying now is all of a sudden the UFC is some purist organization that doesn't care about super fights. That's what we're saying. Like that's the logic we're going to use, that they don't want to milk the money cow that would be a super fight with.
Hey, Devin, can I throw something in real quick?
Go ahead.
They released Conor McGregor from his contract temporarily to fight Floyd Mayweather in a boxing match. They brought in a jacked up on steroids to the gills Brock Lesnar, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And they're going to bring him in again, or they're trying to, but there's something going on there that we can't quite figure out yet. They Conor McGregor threw a dolly through a bus, and they bought him out of that because they didn't want the problem going on with that. They brought back Royce Gracie to fight Matt Hughes when Royce looked like he was 700 years old, and Hughes looked like he was chiseled out of marble. Do I need to go on? How many of these circus shows do we need to see? Oh yeah, I almost forgot. They just brought back Anderson the Spider Silva to fight Adesanya in Australia last weekend. A total disaster. Yeah, I think the UFC probably needs to do something to recoup a little bit because there's a lot of pissed off fans, including me, because I want my money back from that Australian show because it sucked.
Yeah. And, when we look at this, I've been saying this on here, Chad, and we've talked about this, and I really think, and I'll tell you what I really think it is. It's because people have short-term memory, and they've kind of fallen asleep over the past 5 years to George St. Pierre. They're not, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn like,
who is George St. Pierre?
Yeah, well, they're not following what he's been saying. He has never closed the door, and I there was a very disingenuous thing that he said. I love George St. Pierre. I think he's a class act. There's so much that but that when I really think it's over, there's so much I'm gonna say about him in praise for his career and stuff. But something he said today was one of the first times I was really just kind of disgusted with George because he made this comment about, I wanted to fight, but the UFC's not really into one-offs right now. They want a champion, and he even said this. He said it would be selfish of me to come back, and I'm sitting here thinking, George, this has played out before. You came springing up out of nowhere, clamoring for a fight with Michael Bisping at middleweight at a division you had never fought at.
Yeah.
When Bisping got this big upset win over Rockhold and became the champion that nobody expected to happen, you clamored for that fight. You basically twisted the UFC's hands then.
Well, no, Devin, he was begging to fight Rockhold, right?
No.
Oh, yeah, no, he wasn't, was he?
Chad, he was doing the same thing then as he's doing now. He was basically saying, I'm going to walk away if I don't get the Bisping fight. I'm going to retire if I don't get the Bisping fight. He got that Bisping fight, and what happened? He's talking about being selfish and not wanting to do one-offs, and that's wrong of him. He won the title and, basically vacated it the next week.
Yeah.
You took the title and then just were like, all right, well, Robert Whittaker's the interim title. Title holder now, who had to go through fucking Yoel Romero to get that. While he went through Michael Bisping to get the undisputed title, and he wasn't wanting nothing to do with Whittaker. So he just like, all right, I'm done. I did what I'm a 2-division champion now. He has no problem with that, man. He wants a fight that's going to be huge. It's going to make him a lot of money and boost his legacy. That was a disingenuous thing for him to say about not wanting to be selfish. He don't care about that.
Here's something that we never talk about, Devin, and that is you're hitting it right on the head, and that's legacy. Okay, so we talk an awful lot about fighters, their money, right? We talk about what have they got in the bank? What's their worth? Do they own their home? How many of the benzos sitting in their driveway are actually paid for? Is that boat that they have paid for? How about the ranch that they're on? Is that really theirs, or are they making payments on it? Are they one fight away from bankruptcy, right? We're always talking about that kind of stuff, and all of a sudden they get to the end of their fighting career, and they're like, oh, crap, I need to fight 3 times, and I need to make big paydays, and I don't care if I win or lose. I'm going to pull out the dog and pony show. I'm going to act like a fool. I'm going to shove people. I'm going to scream and yell. I'm going to do whatever I've got to do as long as it gets attention, right? But the one thing we never talk about that you just nailed is this. We never talk about fighters' legacies because most of them are not smart enough. That's maybe too harsh. Most of them are not thinking because MMA is so new that they're not thinking about the value of legacy yet. Because Royce Gracie's legacy it's just now starting to really pay off. Dan Severn, did you see Dan on ESPN the other night? He's got brown hair, brown eyes, or brown mustache, brown eyebrows. Dan, I know Dan. Dan has black hair. Dan has a black mustache. Everything on Dan was brown hair. Dan has no wrinkles. Dan has invested in looking different, which is, I don't know why, but I suspect it has something to do with Dan saying, because Dan's a smart man, and I suspect it has something to do with Dan saying, you know, if I'm going to be a representative of MMA in the UFC, I need to look like it and I need to act like it. You know, it wasn't until 7 years ago, that we started seeing UFC champions wearing suits, you know, $3,000 suits and wearing a $5,000 watch. Now, if you see a UFC champion wearing a $5,000 watch, you laugh at them. If they've got a $5,000 suit on, you go, wow, man, where'd they pull that out of? The laundry? Because, you know, they're coming out and they're looking like a champ now, and they're trying to endorse themselves the way boxing does. So legend is just starting to become something that people are aware of in MMA. Boxing, they've been aware of that forever. And the NFL, Peyton Manning, he's been aware of his legacy since he played college football. Don't do something stupid. Don't get arrested. Don't get a DUI. Don't, whatever it is, right? I mean, that will ruin you, and that will ruin your life. You know, don't, whatever it is, don't, who's the guy the football player, Rice, Ray Rice, I think I'm getting that right, hit his girlfriend, despicably hit that woman and horribly in the elevator. You know, don't do that. And it's like GSP, again, is 3 miles ahead of everybody else in a foot race, because he's going, I am working on my legacy, because one of these days my baseball card is going to matter and it's going to be worth something. Okay, so I rambled on there for a little bit. Sorry about that. Hey, we're at 13 minutes. Sit me off on GSP in 2 minutes so we can get to the other thing.
Well, real quick, Chad, I want to echo what you were saying, because George, if I really thought that this was the end, I've been saying that I think there should be books written by George St. Pierre or about George St. Pierre on how to manage a career, because he doesn't really have much competition when it comes to legacy right now. And why is that? It's not because there hasn't been other great fighters that, when you just look at what they've done in the cage, can compete with him. Obviously, John Jones. Obviously, Mighty Mouse Johnson. Well, Mighty Mouse isn't really a good comparison because he doesn't have the scandals. But GSP right now, he hasn't made those mistakes. He's beat the 2 losses that he has. He's avenged. He's beat everybody he's ever fought. And he talked a lot in this press conference today about wanting to go out on top and all that, and that's great. The thing is, George clearly has something in him that he feels. He said he feels like he's a world beater right now. He says physically he feels better than ever. He's been saying this. He still
thinks he's going to retire.
Yeah, he wants to. There's something he wants to add to his legacy, and I think that he clearly wants another fight, another big fight, and you know he's being smart about it. So
what does that fight have to have? Because it's not money, right?
No, it has to have a good competitor that is going to help sell the fight. It's going to need to be like a super fight of the caliber of another undefeated guy like Khabib Nurmagomedov, or it's going to need like potentially a third title on the line, which is what I've been saying if they ever did open that 65-pound division, which, dude, we're on the cusp of. They're not going to be able to withstand that very long. It's going to happen, and him and Askren would be a perfect pair up there for that title, and he'd be the first person in UFC history to win 3 titles. Agreed. I mean, he would just add to his resume on top of being a class act, on top of really changing the sport when he came in. St. Pierre's being smart, and that's why I look at this as a total publicity stunt. He got his name out there. People are going to be looking up George St. Pierre. New fans are going to be learning about him, and his name's relevant again. And here on the CRP, we are observant enough to know that this is probably not what it seems.
Well, we're damn sure never scared to face a conspiracy theory, if nothing else. And we usually come out right almost every time. So is it a conspiracy theory if we come out right? Okay, hey, listen, we got to move on. We're at 16 minutes, and we're not supposed to go that long on these bursts. But we got to talk about this real quickly because speaking of conspiracy theories, here's my big conspiracy theory. The UFC is trying to do a continental UFC so that they will eventually have, and if they're not, they should be, so they eventually will have continental UFCs. So they're going to have UFC Asia, UFC Oceania, UFC Europe, UFC South America, and UFC North America. Now from that, they can do, say, every New Year's Eve, all of those champions fight one another in a super fight of the century, the way we used to say the UFC and Pride every New Year's Eve should fight champion to champion. That's what should happen. Never happened. Well, it kind of happened, but it never really happened the way it should have. I suspect that something like that is happening. We can get to that at another time, but it leads us into, it's our segue into what we're getting ready to talk about, which is the Spider is fighting again, and I really wish he wouldn't, I'm going to be honest, but it doesn't matter because after we watched the last Brazilian Feast, which I thought was an awful show other than a couple of great fights, it really showed that the UFC is willing to put a total crap undercard together and then even two really bad main card events as long as they have two good fights for the finale. And I think UFC Brazil is about building UFC Brazil. And I think they've finally gotten to the point where they're doing that. And the Spider is the one that's going to launch that. Because he's not the only one. Because you also have your boy Jose that also said, I only want to fight in Brazil now. So you have a whole bunch of Brazilian fighters saying, I don't want to travel anymore. I don't want to fight outside of my country. I'm 35 years old. I've got kids. I've got a wife. I don't like traveling all the time anymore. I want to fight right here at home. And there's plenty of people in the audience. I'm making money. Why wouldn't we do it here? Give me your thoughts, Devin. You got about 3 minutes.
Well, I definitely think that they're building that Brazilian market. I looked at the card, and right now the rumor has it. Although there was a report coming out today that Nunez isn't going to fight at 237, and that'll be kind of a disappointment if that does happen because what has been scheduled was going to be a all women headliner with the women's bantamweight title on the line between Nunez, the Brazilian, versus Holly Holm, and then the American, and then bantamweight the strawweight women's title fight between American champion Rose Namajunas versus Jessica Andrade, which I think is capable of headlining a pay-per-view. That fight is great, but that's not really what we're talking about here. But they've also got Rogerio Nogueira is going to fight on that, and he's older than dirt. And then they've got the two legends. Jose hasn't been announced about anything. I've heard rumors of Brian Ortega, but they did just announce that Anderson Silva is going to be fighting on the UFC 237 card in Rio de Janeiro against Jared Cannonier, who actually began his career at heavyweight in the UFC, went down to light heavyweight, had some mixed results, both divisions, made his UFC middleweight debut on very short notice as a fill-in for a fight against David Branch, who was ranked in the top 10 at middleweight, and he knocked him out in the second round. So just out of nowhere, Cannonier goes from being a journeyman at light heavyweight to being a top 10 ranked guy at middleweight, and they're bringing him in there. And this he's got a lot of power. He's a stealthy guy, not near the fighter or talent that Anderson Silva is. And Anderson still showed that he has a lot in him with the Adesanya fight. That he's not completely over the hill yet. But I interpret this that Anderson didn't hang up the gloves in Australia and is willing to fight this Cannonier guy because they're probably trying to get him to go out on a win in Brazil. And if that's where he takes his final bow and lays the gloves down as in Brazil off of W, I think that'd be cool. It'd be really horrible if he goes down there and fights in Brazil. And if he loses to this guy, he's going to get cracked. So he's not going to be able to fight him with his hands down. So
talk about your legacy.
Yeah, and we've seen this, and this can tie into George St. Pierre because all these greats, I mean, BJ Penn, Matt Hughes, Randy Couture, Chuck Liddell, probably the most notable. Somebody who's going to have serious brain issues later in life because of him staying around too long. Fedor now. We've seen this time and time again where people hold on too long. Anderson Silva's already snapped his shin in half and failed a PED drug screen after losing the belt. And so, he's already done damage to his career and lost to guys like Michael Bisping that he would have destroyed in his prime. So, I already think he's held on a little too long, but hopefully at this point they can salvage what there is and he can go out with a win and hang up the gloves in his home country. I think that'd be cool. And I thought the Adesanya fight would have been perfect though still because it was the passing of the baton. It was a beautiful moment. All the respect in the cage afterwards between him and Adesanya, and the cry at the weigh-ins, and it definitely seemed like a turning of the guard here, and but now Silva's coming back to Brazil, so it's what he wanted to do. It was a little unpredictable. Yeah. I didn't predict that, but
Well, here's I'm gonna throw a little wrench in it, and I'm gonna say this. I don't care if he wins or loses. I think Silva's gonna fight one or two more times in Brazil after this.
That's possible.
And I think he's gonna do it simply to help him build the brand down there. They signed him to some crazy amount of fights anyway. So he's under contract with them forever. He can't go anywhere else. I don't think he needs the money. I can't imagine him needing the money, but maybe he does in some way. With entourages and, aunts and uncles and cousins. And, you're talking about a different part of the world where, that money can go really quickly, supporting, huge families. And maybe that's the case. Either way, I think that Silva is going to fight one or two more times after this, no matter what, win, lose, or draw. I think that's already set in stone, and I think that's the case because I believe they're trying to build up a UFC Brazil, and I think we will see a UFC Mexico, a UFC Peru, something like that in the near future as well. Maybe not this year, but maybe next year. Mexico, they don't have time right now, but they're building up South America. They're gonna call it UFC Latin UFC. They're gonna have UFC North America. They're gonna have UFC Asia. They're gonna have UFC Oceania, and they're gonna have European UFC. And then I think that's what they're building towards. It seems obvious to me.
And remember, Chad, they've already kind of started. The ball's been rolling in that direction for a while because they had the Ultimate Fighter. They had some Ultimate Fighter seasons that were Ultimate Fighter by nationality, Brazil versus America and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the main reason for this is because at the beginning of 2019 they had that 2 or 3, I think it was a 2-week layoff, where there wasn't any fights at the beginning of the year, and then they brought in then the whole ESPN era began with the Cejudo Dillashaw fight on ESPN Plus,
Yeah.
and since then there's been a card every week. So and I think that they definitely are broadening their reach globally because they don't want to have an American headliner in the States every single week,
Well,
obviously. So, and I think we're going to see it being more common where they're in they were just in Australia. They are in the Czech Republic this weekend. They they were in Tucson. I mean Phoenix last weekend. They're going to Brazil soon. They were just in Brazil. So they're going all over.
Look, Devin. Here's the thing. We've been talking about this, and we were really the first podcast to talk about this at all. Other people weren't even looking at it. When DAZN first came out, we didn't even know how to pronounce it because it was so new that it was like Dazagna. What do you call it? I don't know. DAZN. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Whatever it is, they're going to do shows. That's how new it was when we started talking about it. And I said then, let's do a show on what's coming, meaning what's the technology that's changing the world. And that has happened. And then we said, in a year, things are going to look so much different that we're not going to recognize pay-per-view. And it's happened much faster than that. With ESPN Plus taking over, there's and DAZN, and now you've got Showtime Plus and all of that. HBO's moving in to do some new things on streaming. You don't even have pay-per-view is getting ready to be. Here's the thing. If you can sell 5 million pay-per-views, right? Or you can sell 60 million DAZN or ESPN Plus at $10 or $5 or whatever, which are you going to do? You're going to take the 60 million every time, even if you're giving it away for free. If you can get 60 million people to watch you instead of 3 to 5 million, you're an idiot if you don't give it away for free to get that 60 million. Because if you have 60 million people, that's 60 million people that you can capitalize on and market towards. And that's what they're trying to do. So
Absolutely,
they are doing a global marketing scheme here. Not a scheme. They're doing a global marketing. They're globally marketing, and it's working. It's going to continue to work because, as you've pointed out many times, the UFC is ahead of everyone when it comes to marketing and doing the right thing and being 2 steps ahead. And then everybody goes, that's stupid. When they got on with Reebok and they took all the fighters' shorts away and all the NASCAR looking, bolts and nuts, whatever that one was, they took that off of there. And everyone went, oh, that's crazy. And now nobody even cares about that anymore. It's Reebok. They one's in green, one's in red, one's in gray, one's in black, whatever it is, and it's accepted now, and no one even thinks about it, right? So you're dead on with that, and I think we're just going to see more and more of it. And pay-per-view, you heard it here first, is dead. Pay-per-view is no more. It will be gone by 2021. You won't even know what pay-per-view is anymore.
Yeah, that's what I was about to was going to comment on, and was that Tyson Fury just signed a very large contract.
Yeah.
And that's going to be with ESPN Plus. So his fights are there. The biggest superstar in boxing, Canelo Alvarez, signed over a $250,000 contract for DAZN.
Yep.
We haven't seen that yet with the UFC.
300 million.
Yeah, like over a $250,000. So we haven't seen that with the UFC yet because they don't do individual fighters, but they're even smarter because they're still selling pay-per-views for what it is, for what it's worth now.
Sure.
And they're gonna get a lot more eyes there on ESPN Plus with the deal. And on top of that, you're talking about the global market, and it's keep in mind, like for example, this weekend in the Czech Republic, this fight's gonna be the Jan Blachowicz and my mind's went blank. Thiago Santos. That main event this week, that fight night, it starts at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on ESPN Plus.
Yeah.
But they can do that. They've got an unlimited way of streaming on that service. They don't have to, get timing frames for some cable company. Like, oh, well, we have to show it at this time, so we have to have it at this time. They don't have to do that for these smaller cards. They can just do, they can do it on ESPN Plus, and ESPN Plus can show a limitless amount of streams.
Right. We don't have a basketball game coming. We don't have a basketball game coming up in an hour.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Exactly. There's gonna be none of that anymore. You can either watch the basketball game or you can watch the UFC. It's
you can watch them both. You can watch the basketball game and then you can stream the UFC later, or you can get bored with the basketball game and then stream the UFC and then go back to the basketball game. It's about choice. And choice is what has taken over the entertainment industry through the ability of the internet to offer choice. And when you look at what our parents looked at, phone service, electric service, water, sewage, land development, anything you can think of, it's like insurance. It's like, ooh, how did you do that? How did you buy a car? Well, you went to a lot and they had 5 cars and you picked out which color you wanted. Now you go online and you go, well, I want this color and I want these features and this and this and this. Order it and I want it here in 6 days and it's there. And the company makes it for you and that's it, And that's what it's all about. Hey, listen, we've ran way over on this, but I love this topic, and I could go on and on about it, obviously, because I have. Sorry for stealing so much time from you, Devin. Anything you want to put on this before we wrap this one up, brother?
No, I would just say that what we're discussing here at the end is worthy of an hour-long discussion. But
yeah,
a lot of it has to do. We're seeing the formation of a globalized economy, and there's really nothing that can be done to stop that process.
No.
And there's gonna be companies like ESPN who, for example, I'm pretty sure on the Cage Rage podcast that you, Miguel, and Scott are gonna do something about Sugar Ray Robinson eventually on a history podcast. And
of course,
it was a big deal. It was a big deal 50, 60 years ago when he went over to Europe and fought the best of Europe. And you still even have a little bit of that in boxing today with like Anthony Joshua's coming to America.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna have that much any longer because the whole world's gonna start having the same shared memories of the past. Yes. We're all gonna start having the same shared memories because instead of which provider is providing the fight over in Europe compared to in America and which is doing this, the whole world's going to have ESPN. And ESPN is going to be a globalized entity that is completely connected by the internet, and they're going to be able to stream it just like we are easily at the touch of a finger. And they pay ESPN and to do this. And the UFC, even Bellator, to give them credit for getting on the zone, they see that. That's where it kind of surprised me that one championship didn't go with a streaming route. They went with TNT when that's just a dying model, But getting into streaming right now that's going to interconnect the entire world to the same live events at the same exact time. Well, not the same time as in time zones, but they're going to be able to pull it up, and there's not going to be a bunch of different companies owning this content. It's going to be this fight is on ESPN, and the whole world's going to be giving them money to watch these fights. So this is globalism.
I think we can wrap it up with the words of the late great John Lennon when he said in Imagine, when he wrote, "Imagine there's no countries. It's easy to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too." And I'm quite fine with that. I like the idea that we're not a bunch of countries, that we're one world, we're one people, and we're one love, and I'm really good with that. And I know that that can be controversial, but you know, I love my country, but I love other people's countries too, and I love all human beings, and I just want the best for everybody. So let's just share and all get along and have lots of fun. We're on this dirt, spinning through space in the middle of nowhere for a flash in eternal time, and it's over. Why fight when we could all hug and love one another and throw fistfights in the middle of a cage? Hey, Devin, it's been great talking to you again, brother. We will do this again very soon. I'll get this up right away. Thank you all. Hey, don't forget, smash that button below. Subscribe. Let us know what we're doing wrong. Let others know what we're doing right. Hit the like button. Share. Run these things through. Tell people about us. All these things help. We're growing like crazy. We're very grateful for that. And we keep cranking out the content. And believe me, we're hearing you guys say, give us more, give us more. And we're trying to. We're staying up as best we can. We're still looking for one more fight analyst. If you're out there and you want to give us a try, hit me up at Cadillac on my Twitter account. You can email me. You can hit me on Facebook, whatever. And I'll talk to you about it. Much love. Until next time, namaste.